Lucas Harrington was not just any businessman. He was one of the richest people in the city, the kind of man who owned skyscrapers, fancy cars, and even a private jet. His company, Harrington Technologies, built computers and phones that people all over the world used. Lucas was used to getting what he wanted when he wanted it. He never worried about problems because he always had a team of people to fix things for him. But today was different. Today was the most important day of Lucas's career. A group of very powerful investors from China were coming to his office to discuss a deal that could make his company even bigger. The deal was worth billions of dollars, enough money to buy anything Lucas could ever dream of. But there was one big problem. The investors only spoke Mandarin, and Lucas didn't know a single word. That was why he had hired Mei Lin, the best Mandarin translator in the city. She was smart, professional, and never missed a meeting. Lucas had paid her a lot of money to be here today because without her, the deal would fall apart. Everything was ready. The conference room was spotless. The fancy chairs were perfectly arranged. The expensive water bottles were lined up in neat rows. The big screen was set up for the presentation. Lucas had even worn his lucky tie, the one he always wore when he needed a deal to go well. Then, 5 minutes before the meeting, his phone rang. It was Mei Lin. Lucas answered, expecting her to say she was in the lobby or running a little late. But instead, May's voice sounded weak and shaky. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "I'm so sorry, but I can't come today. I have a terrible fever. I can barely stand. I tried to push through, but I just can't make it." Lucas felt his stomach drop. His face turned pale. His hands started to sweat. "What do you mean you can't come?" he snapped. "This meeting is in 5 minutes. Those investors are flying back to China tonight. If we don't sign this deal today, it's over." May coughed weakly. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Harrington. I tried." Lucas didn't let her finish. He hung up and immediately started shouting for his assistants. "Someone find me another translator. Now." His employees scrambled. They called every translation service in the city. They messaged every Mandarin speaker they knew. But no one was available on such short notice. Lucas paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. He checked his watch every 10 seconds. The investors would be here any minute. Without a translator, they wouldn't understand a word he said. They would think he was disrespectful. They would walk out. The deal would be ruined. His assistant, a nervous young man named David, rushed in. "Sir, I've called everyone. No one can help. What do we do?" Lucas wanted to scream. He had spent months preparing for this moment. He had flown around the world to meet these investors. He had promised his board this deal would happen. And now, because of one missing translator, everything was about to fall apart. Just then the elevator dinged. The doors opened. The Chinese investors had arrived. Lucas took a deep breath, trying to look calm. But inside, he was panicking. He had no plan. No backup. No way to communicate. This was a disaster. And then, something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything. While Lucas Harrington was panicking and his employees were running around like scared mice, one person in the office remained completely calm. This person moved slowly, quietly, almost like a shadow. His name was Mr. Chen, and he was the janitor. Every single day, Mr. Chen arrived at Harrington Technologies before the sun came up. He pushed his cleaning cart from floor to floor, emptying trash cans, mopping floors, and wiping down windows. He never complained. He never asked for anything. Most of the time, the people in the office didn't even notice him. They walked right past him, as if he were invisible. They left their coffee cups on tables for him to clean up. They never said thank you. But Mr. Chen didn't mind. He was used to being ignored. Mr. Chen was an older man with gentle eyes and rough hands. He had come to America many years ago from China, hoping for a better life. Back in his home country, he had been a respected professor. He spoke 4 languages. He had written books. He had taught hundreds of students. But when he moved to America, no one cared about his degrees or his experience. Every job he applied for turned him away. "Your English isn't perfect," some said. "You don't have American work experience," others told him. "You're too old," a few even admitted. So Mr. Chen took the only job he could find, cleaning offices. It didn't pay much, but it was enough to send money back to his daughter, who was studying to become a doctor. That was all that mattered to him. On this particular morning, Mr. Chen was sweeping near the conference room when he heard Lucas shouting. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but it was impossible not to hear. "I need a Mandarin translator right now, or this whole deal is ruined," Lucas bellowed. Mr. Chen paused. He understood every word, not just in English but in Mandarin too. For a moment, he considered walking away. No one ever listened to him anyway. Why would they start now? But then he thought about how stressed everyone looked. He thought about how much this deal must mean to them. He took a deep breath. And then, for the first time in years, Mr. Chen decided to speak up. He stepped forward, his cleaning rag still in his hand. "Excuse me," he said softly. No one heard him. The office was too loud, too chaotic. Mr. Chen cleared his throat and tried again, a little louder this time. "Excuse me. I speak Mandarin." At first, Lucas didn't even turn around. He was too busy yelling at his assistant. But then one of the employees, a young woman named Sarah, noticed Mr. Chen standing there. She tapped Lucas on the shoulder. Sir? The janitor just said he speaks Mandarin." Lucas spun around. His eyes landed on Mr. Chen, really looked at him for the first time ever. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Lucas let out a frustrated laugh. "The janitor speaks Mandarin? Yeah, right. He probably knows how to say hello and thank you. That's not going to help us." Mr. Chen didn't get angry. He didn't walk away. He simply looked Lucas straight in the eye and said, in perfect Mandarin. Translation: "Honorable sirs, if you need a professional translator, I would be happy to help. I taught linguistics at Peking University for 20 years. I believe I can accurately convey your meaning." The room went completely still. Lucas's mouth fell open. Because Mr. Chen didn't just speak Mandarin. He spoke it like a scholar. Like a man who had spent his life surrounded by books and knowledge. Like someone who was far, far more than just a janitor. And in that moment, everything changed. The air in the office felt heavy with tension as Lucas Harrington stared at the elderly janitor who had just spoken flawless Mandarin. For several seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the nervous tapping of a pen from one of the assistants who didn't know what to do with their hands. Lucas blinked rapidly, as if trying to clear his vision. He had seen this janitor every day for years, pushing his mop bucket, emptying trash cans, wiping down glass doors. He had walked past him countless times without a second glance. And now this same man was standing before him speaking like a university professor. You actually understand all that business Mandarin?" Lucas asked, his voice much quieter than before. Mr. Chen nodded calmly. "I was head of the linguistics department at Peking University for 15 years. I've translated documents far more complex than anything you'll discuss today." One of the Chinese investors, a sharp-eyed man in an expensive suit, suddenly stepped forward and began speaking rapidly to Mr. Chen. The two exchanged several sentences back and forth, with Mr. Chen occasionally gesturing toward Lucas and the presentation materials on the table. The investors' faces gradually changed from skeptical to impressed. Lucas turned to his assistant Sarah and whispered, "What are they saying?" Sarah, who knew a little Mandarin, listened carefully. I think Mr. Chen is explaining your entire business proposal to them, and he's doing it better than our slides do." Lucas felt his knees go slightly weak. This was impossible. This was miraculous. This was the most embarrassing and wonderful moment of his professional life. He grabbed Mr. Chen's arm. "Please," he said, his voice urgent but no longer shouting. "I need your help. I'll pay you triple what Mei Lin makes. Just help me get through this meeting." Mr. Chen studied Lucas's face for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He gently removed Lucas's hand from his arm. "Mr. Harrington," he said quietly but firmly, "I don't want any money. Not yet. First, I want your respect. Not just for me, but for every person who works in this building while you walk past them like they're furniture." The office became so quiet you could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the break room. Several of the cleaning staff who had gathered in the hallway exchanged shocked glances. No one ever talked to the billionaire CEO like this. Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked around at all the faces watching him, his nervous executives, the curious investors, the janitorial staff peeking through the door. For the first time in his life, Lucas Harrington felt something he wasn't used to feeling: shame. "You're right," he said finally. Then, louder so everyone could hear, "You're absolutely right. Mr. Chen, I'm asking for your help, and I promise you'll have my full respect. Starting right now." Mr. Chen studied Lucas's face a moment longer, then nodded. He removed his janitor's vest to reveal a surprisingly crisp, white shirt underneath. "Then let's begin," he said. "The investors have questions about your manufacturing process in Singapore." As Mr. Chen seamlessly switched between languages, explaining complex business concepts with ease, Lucas realized two things simultaneously. First, that this meeting might actually be saved. And second, that he had been completely wrong about nearly everything, especially about judging people by their job titles. The most important person in the room wasn't wearing a designer suit. He wasn't sitting at the head of the table. He had been there all along, quietly keeping the floors clean, waiting for someone to finally see him. The atmosphere in the conference room transformed completely when Mr. Chen returned wearing a borrowed suit jacket from the company's lost-and-found closet. Though the sleeves were slightly too short, he carried himself with such quiet dignity that no one noticed the imperfect fit. The Chinese investors, who had been standing awkwardly by the door, immediately brightened when Mr. Chen greeted them properly with a slight bow and the exact right honorifics in their regional dialect. Lucas watched in stunned silence as Mr. Chen didn't just translate words, but smoothed over every rough edge in the business proposal. When Lucas's presentation slides mentioned aggressive expansion, Mr. Chen rendered this as enthusiastic partnership opportunities. Where Lucas had written cost-cutting measures, Mr. Chen explained this as wise financial stewardship. The investors nodded approvingly at each adjustment. One of the oldest investors, a silver-haired gentleman named Mr. Wang, asked a pointed question about product safety standards. Lucas started to answer with his usual confident tone, but Mr. Chen gently touched his elbow and whispered, "They expect more humility when discussing potential problems." Then Mr. Chen translated Lucas's answer while adding traditional Chinese sayings about quality, being like the careful stitching of a grandmother's quilt. The investors visibly relaxed, several of them smiling for the first time. As the meeting progressed, Mr. Chen did something remarkable. He noticed when one investor struggled to understand a technical term and, without being asked, fetched a notepad to sketch a simple diagram. When another investor mentioned his company's anniversary date, Mr. Chen quietly suggested Lucas offer congratulations, a detail that had been left out of the prepared materials. These small acts built trust in ways no PowerPoint slide ever could. The climax came when the lead investor asked about Harrington Technologies' employee benefits. Lucas began reciting dry statistics about healthcare plans, but Mr. Chen interrupted politely. "With your permission," he said to Lucas, then turned to the investors and shared a story about how American companies value their workers like family. He spoke of mutual respect between employers and employees, weaving in traditional Chinese values without making it sound rehearsed. The investors exchanged meaningful glances. Then something extraordinary happened. Mr. Wang set down his teacup and spoke directly to Mr. Chen in Mandarin for nearly a full minute. Mr. Chen listened carefully, then turned to Lucas with tears glistening in his eyes. "Mr. Wang says his father was also a teacher who became a factory worker when they moved to Hong Kong. He says he recognizes true wisdom when he sees it, and that any company fortunate enough to have someone like you working for them must be worth investing in." Lucas felt his throat tighten. Before he could respond, Mr. Wang reached across the table and shook his hand, then Mr. Chen's. The other investors followed suit. The deal was sealed not with contracts or signatures, but with this simple human connection. As the meeting ended and the investors left with promises to sign paperwork the next day, Lucas stood motionless by the window. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the office he'd walked through every day for years, but today he saw everything differently. The cleaning staff emptying trash bins, the cafeteria workers preparing the afternoon coffee, the security guards changing shifts, these weren't just background characters in his story. They were people like Mr. Chen, each with their own histories, talents, and dreams he'd never bothered to imagine. Mr. Chen began gathering his things, preparing to return to his janitorial duties, but Lucas stopped him. "Please," he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft, "would you join me in my office? There's something important I'd like to discuss." For the first time that day, Mr. Chen looked uncertain, but he nodded, and together they walked down the hallway where just hours earlier, one had been a panicked billionaire and the other an invisible janitor. Now they moved side by side, two men who had discovered something far more valuable than any business deal, the understanding that true worth has nothing to do with job titles and everything to do with character. The office staff watched them go, sensing that something fundamental had changed, though they couldn't yet put it into words. But in that moment, everyone knew one thing for certain: nothing at Harrington Technologies would ever be the same again. The door to Lucas Harrington's private office clicked shut behind them, muffling the usual office noises. Lucas gestured for Mr. Chen to take a seat in one of the plush leather chairs that usually only hosted important executives. Mr. Chen sat down carefully, his posture perfect despite the long day, his hands resting quietly on his knees. Lucas poured 2 glasses of water from the expensive crystal decanter on his desk. His hands shook slightly as he handed one to Mr. Chen. For the first time in his life, the billionaire businessman didn't know how to begin a conversation. Finally, Lucas cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, today you saved my company. Probably my entire career." He paused, staring into his water glass. "But what I don't understand is why someone like you has been cleaning floors all this time." Mr. Chen took a small sip of water before answering. His voice was calm, but there was a quiet sadness in it too. "When I first came to America 15 years ago, I brought all my diplomas with me. I had letters of recommendation from 3 university presidents in China. I had published 12 academic papers." He set down his glass carefully. "The first job agency told me my English wasn't good enough. The second said I was overqualified. The third said—" Mr. Chen's voice trailed off for a moment. "The third interviewer told me I should try a Chinese restaurant instead." Lucas felt his face grow hot. He remembered how earlier that day he had assumed Mr. Chen only knew basic Mandarin phrases. "I took whatever work I could find," Mr. Chen continued. "Dishwasher, delivery driver, night security guard. Then I got this janitor position." He looked around the luxurious office. "It paid enough to send my daughter to medical school. That was all that mattered." Lucas swallowed hard. "Your daughter?" A light came into Mr. Chen's eyes for the first time. "Dr. Li Chen. She graduated top of her class at Johns Hopkins last year. She's doing her residency at Massachusetts General Hospital now." He pulled out a worn wallet and showed Lucas a photo of a young woman in a white coat. "She doesn't know I clean offices. I tell her I work as a consultant." Lucas's stomach twisted. He thought about all the times he'd walked past Mr. Chen without a glance. All the times he'd left trash on his desk for the cleaners to pick up. All the times he'd complained about the coffee stains on the break room counter. "But why didn't you say something today?"
Lucas asked.
"When you heard me panicking about the translator?" Mr. Chen smiled slightly. "At first, I thought no one would believe me. Then, I suppose I wanted to see if you would notice me. Really notice me." He looked directly at Lucas. "Most rich men never see the people who clean their offices. We're like wallpaper to them." The truth of those words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He thought about Maria, the woman who cleaned his penthouse apartment every week. He couldn't remember if she had children. He thought about Carlos, the security guard who held the door for him every morning. He didn't know where Carlos lived. Lucas stood up suddenly and walked to the window. The city lights twinkled below, cars moving like tiny toys on the streets. He had always loved this view because it made him feel powerful. Now it just made him feel small. "When I was 8 years old," Lucas said quietly, "my father took me to one of his construction sites. He pointed to a worker carrying bricks and said, 'See that man? He's been doing that same job for 20 years. That's what happens when you don't work hard enough.'" Lucas turned back to Mr. Chen. "I think my father was wrong. Mr. Chen didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The silence stretched between them, filled with all the things Lucas was just beginning to understand. About privilege, about judgment, about all the brilliant people the world overlooks every single day. Finally, Lucas walked back to his desk. He took out a blank sheet of paper and began writing. "Mr. Chen," he said without looking up, "I'd like to make you an offer. But first, there's something important I need to do." Whatever Lucas was writing, he did it with great care, as if each word mattered. And for the first time in his life, they truly did. Lucas Harrington slid the freshly signed document across his desk toward Mr. Chen. The paper contained an offer for the newly created position of Senior Director of International Communications, complete with a salary 5 times what Mr. Chen made as a janitor. Lucas had stayed up half the night drafting it himself, refusing to let his assistants help. Mr. Chen picked up the document and read it slowly. His face remained unreadable as his eyes moved down the page, taking in the generous salary, the stock options, the corner office with a view. When he finished, he set the paper down carefully and looked at Lucas with those calm, wise eyes. "This is very kind," Mr. Chen said. "But I have one condition." Lucas leaned forward eagerly. "Name it."
"Anything."
Mr. Chen folded his hands on the desk. "When I accept this position, you must promise that no one at Harrington Technologies will ever feel invisible again. Not the janitors. Not the cafeteria workers. Not the security guards. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity." Lucas didn't hesitate. He reached for his intercom and called his entire executive team into the office immediately. When they arrived, confused and rubbing sleep from their eyes, for it was still early morning, Lucas made an announcement that would change the company forever. Starting that day, all janitorial staff would receive full health care benefits. The company cafeteria workers would get paid sick leave. Security guards would have opportunities for promotion. There would be a new scholarship fund for employees' children. Every Friday, executives would work alongside maintenance staff to understand their jobs. The room erupted in murmurs. Some executives looked shocked. A few looked uncomfortable. But then something amazing happened. Sarah, Lucas's assistant, started clapping. Soon others joined in. The applause spread through the office like wildfire until even the most skeptical executives were standing and clapping too. Mr. Chen nodded his approval. "Then I accept your offer." The changes happened faster than anyone expected. That very afternoon, Lucas held an all-company meeting in the largest conference room. For the first time ever, janitors sat next to vice presidents. Cafeteria workers shared sandwiches with accountants. Security guards chatted with IT specialists. Lucas stood before them all, looking nervous but determined. "From now on," he announced, his voice echoing through the silent room, "Harrington Technologies will be a place where everyone matters. Where we judge people by their character, not their job titles. Where—" He paused, searching for words, then simply said, "where we notice each other." As the weeks passed, the transformation became visible. The hallways buzzed with energy as employees at all levels started greeting each other by name. Break rooms became places of laughter instead of uncomfortable silence. When the cleaning staff got new uniforms that actually fit properly, they stood taller as they worked. Mr. Chen moved into his new office, but refused to let anyone call him sir. He ate lunch in the cafeteria every day, sitting with different groups of workers and listening to their stories. Slowly, he helped Lucas understand that being a good leader wasn't about power, it was about seeing people. Really seeing them. One rainy afternoon, Lucas found Mr. Chen in his office, staring at a photograph on his desk. It showed a younger Mr. Chen standing proudly in front of a university classroom in China, surrounded by smiling students. "You must miss teaching," Lucas said quietly. Mr. Chen touched the photo gently. "Every day." An idea sparked in Lucas's mind. That evening, he made phone calls late into the night. By the end of the week, Harrington Technologies announced a new partnership with the local community college, a program where employees could teach evening classes in their areas of expertise. Mr. Chen would be the first professor, offering courses in Mandarin and cross-cultural communication. The morning the program was announced, Lucas arrived at work to find something extraordinary. The entire cleaning staff had lined up in the lobby, holding a banner they'd made themselves. It read, "Thank you for seeing us." Lucas, the billionaire who had never cried in public, had to wipe his eyes before entering the elevator. As the doors closed, he caught sight of Mr. Chen smiling at him from across the lobby. In that moment, Lucas understood something more valuable than all his wealth. True success isn't measured in dollars or deals. It's measured in changed lives. And sometimes, the person who helps you see that truth is the one you least expected, the quiet janitor, who turned out to be the wisest teacher of all. The office had become more than just a workplace. It had become a community. And for Lucas Harrington, that was just the beginning. 1 year after that fateful day when a janitor saved a billion-dollar deal, the Harrington Technologies annual gala looked completely different from years past. Instead of being held in some fancy hotel ballroom with only executives invited, it took place right in the company cafeteria, decorated with strings of lights and handmade banners. The guest list included every single employee, from the newest junior programmer to the longest-serving maintenance worker. Lucas Harrington stood at the front of the room, waiting for the applause to die down. The crowd noticed immediately how much he had changed. The arrogant billionaire who used to stride through offices without making eye contact now stood with relaxed shoulders and a warm smile. His expensive tailored suit had been replaced with simple slacks and a Harrington Technologies polo shirt, the same one every employee received that year as part of the new uniform equality policy. 12 months ago, Lucas began, his voice steady, "I thought I knew everything about running a successful company." A chuckle ran through the crowd. "Then a wise man taught me that real success isn't about how much money you make, but about how many lives you touch." He gestured to Mr. Chen, who sat at a table near the front alongside his daughter, Dr. Chen. The young doctor beamed with pride at her father, her white coat draped over the back of her chair. Mr. Chen himself looked years younger, his eyes bright behind his glasses, wearing the comfortable smile of a man finally valued for his true worth. Lucas continued, sharing the company's incredible year. Profits had increased by 30%, not from cutting costs, but from employee ideas that had been ignored for years. The new language program Mr. Chen started had helped secure 3 international deals no one saw coming. Most importantly, employee happiness ratings were the highest in the company's history. "But numbers aren't what matter tonight," Lucas said, folding his speech notes and setting them aside. "What matters is people." One by one, he called up employees from all levels of the company to share their stories. Maria from custodial services tearfully explained how the new healthcare plan had saved her husband's life. Jamal from security described his promotion to facilities manager. Young intern Zoe showed the app she developed, an idea executives had rejected years before, but that was now making waves in the tech world. Finally, Lucas invited Mr. Chen to say a few words. The room fell completely silent as the former janitor, now respected director and part-time professor, stood before his colleagues. "In China," Mr. Chen said in his quiet voice, "we have a saying, a single kind word can warm 3 winter months." He looked around at all the faces watching him. "This past year, I have seen how small acts of respect can change an entire company. How seeing people really seeing them can transform lives." He turned to Lucas. "Even the life of a billionaire." The laughter that followed was warm and genuine. As the evening wound down, Lucas found himself standing by the dessert table with Mr. Chen, both men balancing plates of slightly melted ice cream. "You know," Lucas said between bites, "I used to think success was about being the smartest person in the room." Mr. Chen smiled knowingly. "And now I know the smartest person in the room is usually the one willing to learn from others," Lucas replied. He gazed around at the diverse crowd laughing together, executives joking with mailroom staff, engineers debating with cafeteria cooks. And that the best deals aren't the ones that make you rich, but the ones that make you better. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, dusting the city in quiet white. But inside Harrington Technologies, the warmth of shared respect and newfound understanding kept everyone cozy. As the last guests said their goodbyes, Lucas made his way to the now empty lobby. He paused by the janitor's closet, the very one where Mr. Chen used to store his cleaning supplies. With a small smile, Lucas reached inside and took out a broom. When the night cleaning crew arrived for their shift, they found something astonishing. There, humming to himself as he swept the already clean floor, was the CEO of the company, happily doing the most basic work with no one watching. And in that simple act, the lesson was complete. The end.